Welcome to the Shoot to Ill podcast, a podcast for, I used to say any and all creatives, but you know what? I don't know if that's being honest about what this podcast is. Let's say, welcome to the Shoot to Ill podcast, a podcast for any and all photo and video shooters. Maybe that'll fit better, but let's just roll with that. So I just got back from my week-long trip. I went to Miami for a week. I shot for 4 days, 2 days, then off 2 days, then on 2 days. And it was great. I think a lot of what I sort of got to experience there, or what I got to thinking about there, was these moments. Like, I think I go on these shoots, or the shoots that I go on these trips for, they're fairly planned, but it's not like every look is planned to the dot, right? Like we're traveling to get some diversity in the looks, maybe to just sort of like keep the photos looking a little bit different, going to new locations. As I was shooting, I think as the shoot progressed, I started feeling more and more comfortable with what I can do with the photo. Sometimes as a photographer, you can take a photo and then already know what you're going to be doing in post to sort of like make it better. Like, I think photographers nowadays, they know what light they like best, whether it's like backlit with a little bounce or whether they like working with golden hour light. I think when we're doing these long day shoots, it's a pretty diverse amount of light. So sometimes we're inside getting a little bit of window light. Sometimes there's overcast outside, especially in Miami, like the clouds come and go. So I have to be on my toes when it comes to adjusting and readjusting the camera for lighting. You know, sometimes we're in the shade, and sometimes we have to bring out our own light because we don't really have any light to work with. So I think as I was shooting, I got really inspired by some of these moments that just happen. The looks may be planned, but the location of where we want the looks to be shot are not planned. So as we're sort of shooting these looks, we're walking around the location, we're trying to find the best spot, and sometimes something magical happens. Like you choose the right place, and the sun is at the perfect position, and you know, lighting is just perfect, the background is just perfect, the outfit is working perfectly with the scene, and everything just works. Those are the moments that I think a lot of people chase after as photographers. Those moments where like you take the photo and then immediately you know, wow, like this is fucking amazing. And then you just end up taking a bunch of photos. I'm like a serial overshooter. I shoot way too many photos. On this trip, I shot 50,000 images. Granted, it was 50,000 images of probably, God, I don't know, maybe 40 looks. It was a lot of outfits. But we'll get to the overshooting later because that I think is a different issue. But the moments that I end up chasing after, I feel like as I've continued to shoot, I meet up with clients, I meet up with people that I'm working with, and a lot of the times I'm not having maybe the same reaction that they're having. Maybe they sort of see the photo that I take and they get really excited, and then I might not have that same excitement. I can try to fake it, but I don't think it's as genuine. So my whole goal with any and all shoots is to just make sure that my client ends up happy with any photo that I take. So as I'm sort of taking the photo and I see their reaction, I try to match their energy, but sometimes I can't. And then there's sometimes where I get really excited, and I can match that energy, and it just sort of like elevates the whole shoot even more. And it's just like a really nice feeling to just sort of like feel like everyone's on the same page. Not to say that I'm never not on the same page, but I think that as a photographer who's been doing this for over 10 years, as I've taken thousands and thousands of portraits of people, I think that as I keep shooting, less and less of those portraits pop out to me. Less and less of them really give me that feeling. And it has to be sort of like this perfect storm of everything working. It has to be, you know, like I said earlier, the lighting, the location, the outfit. Maybe it's like I think back to a shoot that I did in Joshua Tree. I shot at this mirror house. It's a location that's fairly famous in Joshua Tree. It's just like this giant rectangle of mirrors out in the middle of the desert, and it looks amazing. What the funny part is that the look that I fell in love with there was didn't have the house in it. It was just a look like we had shot around the house all day, and then finally around sunset, we had gone out of the house and just sort of started shooting like with the rocks and the Joshua trees in the background. The sun was setting and the moon was coming up. I haven't been to many places that have this happen, but there's like this sort of like cotton candy sky almost fairly often out there, to where like the sun sets and the moon comes up. So you just see all the oranges and the yellows transitioned into these blues and dark purples. And so it's a very beautiful thing. And so as I was shooting, the sun setting, the moon's coming up, and it's just such a surreal moment. And not only was I taking pictures of the person that I was working with, but then I was also, I wanted to take pictures of just what was going on. And so I got photos and video of just that amazing scene and the moon coming up, and the moon behind my subject. And it was just a moment that I will never forget. I sort of sometimes think of this because I don't have a lot of photos of myself in these types of situations. I don't ever really take pictures of myself. You know, the self-portraits that I just recently took, I think those were something that I needed to do for myself. And it was nice to just sort of like do it, but it's not something that I'm fairly comfortable doing. I think there was a point in my life where I was more comfortable in front of the camera, but now I just feel more comfortable behind the camera. But I like to think that in the future, if something happens, God forbid, if something happens, if my mind starts going, if I develop Alzheimer's or something, I like to believe that I have this body of work that if I flip through it as a book or something, or if I'm looking at it on the screen, I can sort of have those memories come back to me and sort of like feel like I'm right back there again, you know? So if I saw that picture that I took in Joshua Tree, I can sort of like have all these emotions and feelings just come back to me and just feel like, not necessarily like I'm there, but remember what the feeling was, and remember what I was feeling while I was taking the photos, remembering the moment, maybe the conversation that we were having, everything. Just it all comes back. Sort of like these flags that you sort of like that you put down in your mind. And not every photo is like that. There's photos of people that I've taken that I don't even remember. I don't even remember some people's names, which is probably really bad, but maybe I should go get checked out for Alzheimer's or something. But I think it's beautiful to just sort of like to live in those moments. You know, I don't necessarily like being the one to just hold the camera up in front of myself. I'm not a selfie person. I don't take a lot of selfies. So I guess in my mind, I hope that me taking the photos is sort of a way of me remembering what that feeling was, or what the moment was that I was trying to capture. But those moments, man, like we're just constantly chasing them. In the beginning, I think I've talked about this before, whether it's on this podcast or in one of the Patreon episodes, but I've talked about this where photography, when you first start doing photography, it's also new and fresh. And so you get that feeling so much more often, that feeling of like, wow, this is amazing. And you keep shooting and shooting and shooting until that feeling stops coming as often. Maybe instead of getting that feeling every time you pick up a camera, maybe you're getting it once a week, or maybe you're getting it once a month. And then later down the line, you're only getting it a couple times a year, maybe once every few years. And so that moment, I think that feeling is like sort of like a feeling that we chase after. Maybe it is a feeling of pride, of just sort of like, wow, I can't believe I took this, or, you know, this is going to be a photo that I'm remembered for, or maybe this is a moment that I'm going to remember forever. maybe it's like a combination of all those things, but I can vividly remember photos that I love, or maybe I might not even remember them now, but if I were to see a picture that I really like or that was of one of these moments, it would just all come back to me. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, chasing after those moments, man, it's super important, and I'm glad that, you know, I got to feel some of those moments on this last trip. And it was cool. It was cool. My girlfriend came with me. You know, we went out on a little double date. It was nice. It was cool. But I did want to talk about one thing that I thought was odd, and and hopefully this is the last time I mention this camera because I don't want to keep talking about it. But I was shooting with the X100VI, and I found something to be a little bit strange. When I shoot with the X100VI, I like shooting with the flash, with the direct flash. I think it's sort of like it gives a little bit more of that retro vibe, that feel that people like. Obviously, without flash, it's still an amazing camera. But as I was shooting with it, I noticed that the resync time for the flash was a little bit longer. So much longer, in fact, that it sort of like, it bothered me. I was glad that I brought an external flash to use with this camera, but it sucked that if I didn't have the flash with me, it would probably be an issue if I was out shooting with like family or friends. So I kind of wanted to test this out on the podcast and see if there's a valid point to this, okay? So I have both cameras here with me. So the one with this tan strap is the X100V, and then the one with the black strap here is the X100VI, okay? So we're going to start with the V, and both of these have the exact same settings. I have shutter set to 60 or 1/60th of a second. I have the ISO set to 640, f-stop set to 5.6, and then I have the TTL flash on, and the flash compensation is set to 0. And then I'll also mention that both of these cameras are fully charged. I charged them both overnight, and I just want to sort of test this out. Okay, so let's test out how many flashes in a row I can get until it doesn't want to shoot anymore. All right, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and then now I'm just going to try to take a bunch really quickly. Okay, so I think this is about 30 right there. And then the camera is about half a meter away from me. So at 30 shots, not one of those failed. So the X100V, like the resync time on the flash on a full battery is great. Now let's switch to the X100VI and see how it does. All right, so let's go ahead and start. So we got 1 already. Already it didn't go off after 1. Hold on. Maybe it's still warming up or something because I just turned it on. Hold on. All right, let's try again. Ready? 1. Oh, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm not sure if that one went off. It didn't go off. So already at 6, it stopped. The battery's full on this right there, full battery. So I was having issues with the flash. And it sucks because I think what happened is that the power distribution is a little off with the same battery. Obviously, they added more into this camera. They added a bigger sensor. They added the IBIS. And there's no way to turn the IBIS off in photo mode. You can turn it off in video mode, but I went through the menu a bunch of times, and I couldn't find a way to turn off the IBIS in photo mode. Because I was having issues with it, I brought this thing along. This is the Godox Lux Junior, and you saw me talk about this when I packed for it for the trip. I'll put it in manual mode, and I'll just put it at the weakest power. And the batteries on this thing are not new. But it's on the weakest power because I'm only shooting, half a meter away. So I don't need a full power flash at this distance. So the light's green up here. That means that it's on and ready to fire. Let's see how many of these I can get before it craps out on me. And again, these aren't new batteries, so I might need to switch out the battery, but let's see. All right. Oh, wait. So if you're using an external flash with this thing, you have to go into the settings, go into flash settings, go into built-in flash, turn your built-in flash off, and then you're going to go into, then you go into your flash function setting and set that to manual, which is the menu that I am hovered on right now, that one right there. So flash compensation is set to 0 again, and let's try this. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then let's just try to throw a bunch out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, it's just going to keep going. Like, this thing is just nice to have. Obviously, it's on the weakest power, so if I were to put it on the strongest power, this is full power here. And I'm sure at this power, it will have to take some time to resync. So let's do 1, 2. Yeah, already. It needs some time. Yeah. Yeah. So a couple seconds. It takes a couple seconds to resync from the strongest flash. And again, these aren't new batteries. I'm sure on new batteries, it will resync a lot faster. But I was honestly very surprised at the fact that, the flash didn't last me as long. And let's take it. Let's do one more time just to make sure with the built-in flash and just to make sure that I'm not crazy here. So settings, built-in flash on, flash compensation 0, flash is set to TTL. And let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Stopped at 13. Okay, so it lasted longer than 6 that time. But now that I've used this camera on a shoot, and I got to put probably about 2,000 photos on it. No, maybe more, maybe closer to 3,000 or 4,000. I'm really happy with the size of the sensor, okay? So the fact that they boosted up the sensor to, 40 megapixels, I think is awesome. I think it's great to just have the extra size to the photos. So that's one plus. Another plus is having the HEIF files. That I just like them better than JPEG. The autofocus is still not what I want. I'm sort of biased, right? Because I shoot with Canon and I've shot with Sony. And so when you're using these higher end cameras, like the R3, the R5, the R6, the autofocus is so insane in all these cameras that when you switch over to something like this and it's not able to find the person's face in low light, it's not, you just have a harder time sort of focusing. So if I'm in low light scenarios, I just sort of use the optical viewfinder here, and I'm not using the digital one. Just this is the one where you look straight out of this little square here, and then you have this white box with another tiny little white box in the middle of it. And you can move the tiny box in the middle of it around by using the joystick. That is where you will focus. And so I press the shutter button halfway down. The smaller box on the inside turns green. And then I press the shutter button all the way down, and it takes a photo. I don't have any issues focusing that way for some reason. I'm not sure why. The optical viewfinder works better for me. Someone much smarter than me will have to describe that or let me know why that is. But that's how I sort of use it in lower light scenarios. You know, like I said, I like to use it with flash a lot. So that's sort of the most common way that I'm using the camera. It's exactly the same way that I used the 5 because its autofocus in low light was not great either. After we're shooting with it, I was like, you know what? It's not that much better than the V. I'm glad I have it for the bigger sensor and the HEIF files, but if I needed to, like if I didn't want the bigger files, I probably wouldn't. So if you're in the market or you're thinking about getting the X100VI, I would really debate with yourself, really think about whether or not you want the bigger sensor. Because if you don't need the 40 megapixel files, the 5 is just as good. You're not necessarily missing out on a lot. Like if you want, unless you really want the bigger files and the IBIS, it's not necessarily worth it. I'm not trying to talk myself out of this camera because I've already purchased it, and I do like having the bigger files, but I think having the bigger files is a trade-off. Like not everyone needs bigger files. Not everyone has like storage space at home. Having double the size of files is going to fill up your hard drives twice as fast. It's just an expense that not a lot of people think of, right? Like now that everyone's taking these digital photos, figuring out a way to save all these photos in a safe way, making sure that you have them for years to come and that you don't lose them or that the files don't get corrupted or you upload them to the cloud is just another thing, another conversation for another day, because that is definitely a way different topic that I've talked about before, but I just think it's sort of boring. A lot of the photographer friends that I have, they have this mentality that they need to have the best. And I think for me, I'm definitely one of those people that wants to have the best product. At the same time, on this photo trip, I only took photos with my R3. I didn't take any photos with my R5C. And that's because I didn't need the 50 megapixel files. The 24 megapixels that the R3 gives me is perfect for the photos that we were taking. We're taking them for social media. We're taking them for, paywall stuff. We don't need the extra megapixels. Like, it's a little bit of overkill, I think, for everyone working with the files. Having files that are that big, it takes twice as long to transfer. They take twice as long to upload to Dropbox. It just becomes a headache. It's something that I thought about because you don't always need the bigger sensor. This is one of the very few moments that I've had in my career where I thought, like, did I make a mistake buying that? Typically, I never have that feeling. Like buying lenses. Lenses are like Pokemon. And I said this to someone who hit me up because lenses are like Pokemon to me. Like you just want to have them all. Lenses retain their value much better. If you try to resell them, you don't lose that much money. You maybe just lose, I don't know, 20%, 25% usually at the most. As long as you keep them pretty clean and you take care of them, they retain their value. Camera bodies are different. Camera bodies lose their value. Camera bodies are like cars. They have a mileage with the shutter count. So the more you use them, the less the camera's worth. But I don't know. I think because I'm one of these guys who wants to have the best option, I'm probably going to end up keeping the 6. But now that I know, and if I would have known this before purchasing it, I probably would have taken it into consideration because I was expecting, the battery life to be a little bit better. And I have read that the X100VI can take more photos on a battery than the X100V. But if you're using the flash, if you're using the IBIS, if you're switching from photo and video, I doubt that it will last longer than the V. It just has more in there. It has more packed in there. that needs the battery life. So I wonder, and I'm assuming that it can be set up in a way to where you have maybe a V mount strapped to it, because I have seen cages or camera cages for the X100VI to where you can maybe rig it out. And why someone would want to rig this camera out is crazy to me. I'm sure someone on YouTube would do it. I'm sure it can do great video, but it's not a video camera. Like I would have been happy to just have the photo settings in this camera without the video in it. But Fuji did pack all that stuff in there just to give more value to people for the money that they spent. So I can't complain. I think it's a great camera for what it is. I don't see it as it's not like a main shooter video camera. It's not a main shooter photo camera. It's an everyday carry camera for me. I like just taking it out. It's small, it's compact, carry it around my neck and just take photos of people and things that I see when I'm walking around or if I'm out on trips or with family. I've said that so many times in these podcasts, but yeah, it's, it is what it is. I think that's it for this camera for me. I don't ever want to talk about this thing again. I think that it's very played out. I think everyone has made so many videos about this thing. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm glad that I got to put it through its paces and I got to see what it's capable of. I guess the one thing that I'm happiest about this camera is that I'm still able to get shitty photos out of it. And by that, I mean photos that are a little bit grungy and dirty with the grain and stuff. That's what I really wanted. I just wanted photos that weren't perfect. I wanted photos that just that gave me a more real feeling, that gave me some texture to them. For that, I'm happy. So I'm probably going to end up keeping it. The X100V is probably going to be my girlfriend's camera from now on. So she'll get that. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. I'd love to just get some feedback, whether you guys think I'm wrong or I'm right. But that's probably it for this episode, guys. I'm filming this the day before it comes out because I literally just landed. I haven't even unpacked yet. And I have a shoot in an hour. So I have to head out to meet a client right now. But again, like always, I appreciate you guys watching. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please give us a good review. It really does help the podcast out. But yeah, that's it. Back to reality for me. Keep shooting. I'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Thank you.